we were talking off air a little about that idea of kind of double and triple jeopardy type attacks. You know,
Absolutely.
So actually, for people who aren't aware of what that means, what do we mean by that?
Okay, so a double extortion attack or a double dip attack is where the cyber criminals will not only encrypt your data, but they will also steal it. And then the idea of that is that if you choose not to pay the cyber criminals off because maybe you've got a good backup, they will threaten to take that data and make it publicly available and just ruin your reputation that way. Well, we have also seen instances as well where the cyber criminals have encrypted all the data and then the victim has paid and got the data back. And then the cyber criminals have come back later on and said, hey, by the way, we've still got a copy of all the stuff and now we're going to get you again. And a triple extortion attack is fortuitously quite niche. But a triple extortion attack is where not only will they encrypt your data, not only will they steal the data and threaten to make it publicly available, but they will also charge you a consultancy fee to tell you exactly how they got into the organization and give you some security advice.
Excellent.
It's not really a great service, but it just shows the way the criminals constantly change and innovate their business models to really squeeze the maximum out of their victims.
Yeah, and I think that was actually a great example of why this continues to be such a problem. Is this constant evolution of the issue. And interestingly, I asked you a few minutes back about whether you should pay or whether you shouldn't. What's the time to decide whether you should pay or whether you shouldn't?
I guess it's not an easy question to answer because it's very circumstantial, but you ideally want to formulate a structure and a plan where you should never be in a position where you really have to pay the cyber criminals off. But you've obviously got to look at what you're presented with. But having good protection and control measures in place so that ideally you don't become a victim in the first place, having a good backup that means you don't necessarily have to pay if it's a simple, straightforward encryption type event, those are good bits of strategy. And those are things that you formulate way before an attack actually happens.
And I suppose actually that you probably kind of walked into the thing that I was looking for was about that planning for, I suppose it's, I think we can all sit here as CTOs and think that we're doing everything that we can to stop an attack. We're investing in security tools, we're training our people, but there's always the chance, and probably, based on some of the numbers in your ransomware report, the likelihood is you're going to have some kind of cybersecurity incident, and the time to plan for that then. So time to plan for that is not during the incident itself.
Absolutely not. No, absolutely. Get a plan in place. Assume you're going to become a victim because that's, numerically speaking, that's the reality. And then look realistically at how you're going to deal with the situation from both a process and a technology point of view. It's definitely good advice. And
I mean, in terms of, well, what do we call that? So I suppose it's incident response planning.
It is incident response planning.
So in terms of that, what are some of the things that we should be thinking as CTOs in terms of what should go in an incident response plan? Then, so obviously think about it ahead of time. But what are the kind of things that we'd want to consider? What are the things that we want to make sure we include in it?
So it should be an all-encompassing document as far as possible. I mean, you're never going to be able to document every conceivable possible thing that's going to happen to the organization, but look at who you are as an organization, what the likely routes in for the cyber criminals would be, what they're likely to do when they get in, and then look at what your priority orders are in terms of protecting data. So sometimes the attacks are sufficiently slow burning that maybe you can take some things offline and protect the data that way. And then look at how you recover, what is the priority in terms of recovery. And then at the same time, looking about your external communication. So how are you communicating to your customers or your service users, depending on the kind of industry that you're in? If you're not able to provide the product or service that you do, how do you communicate if you've got users' data that's been compromised? What are you obliged to do from a regulatory point of view? All these things need to be documented because, like I said, you don't want to be figuring this all out while your network's in flames.
And you shared a great tip with me, actually, when we spoke previously about the idea of whatever you do with these incident recovery plans is don't leave the incident recovery plan solely based on kind of infrastructure that might well get targeted. So